Welcome to today's video where I'll be giving you the exact business development process for recruiters that you can follow right now to scale your billings in 2026. If you're a busy, burnt out recruiter, you feel like you're doing all of the activity, but you're just not getting the results that you want and you're just hitting your head against the brick wall, then this video is for you. If you stay until the end, I'll be sharing with you my #1 secret. And this secret is the entire reason I've been able to scale 4 individual desks to over $1 million every single year. So stick around if you want to find out exactly how I did that. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be breaking up the business development strategy into 3 core components. Those components are #1, front end, #2, midway through, and #3, back end conversion strategies. Now, recruiters quite often come to me when I'm teaching my sales training programs and they think that they've got a BD problem overall. Generally speaking, they struggle with BD. But what I always find is when I ask questions and dive deep into whether it's the front end, the midway through the conversation, or the close, the back end of the conversation, usually they have a challenge in one of 3 of those particular areas in particular. Now, if you are a little bit less experienced, you may have a challenge with the entire sales cycle. However, if you're an experienced recruiter, I typically find that you've got a challenge in one of those areas in particular. So let's break down what that looks like. Let's look at the front end stages of a business development cycle. So what I consider to be front end stages is everything up until the point of generating a lead, but not yet having a sales conversation. Think about things such as Boolean searching, market mapping, LinkedIn searching, finding the right people to speak to, retrieving contact information. Lead generation strategies could be things such as outreach messages, landing pages, lead magnets, cold calls, warm calls, and there's so much more. And by the way, I've got a video on 26 ways to generate leads. I'll leave a link above if you want to check that out. It's got 26 ways that you can generate leads, and which you pick depends on the industry that you recruit. So if you're a little bit unsure on which lead gen strategies are for you, then definitely check that out. Going back to the actual front end stage of the process. Now, I like to consider this as 3 things: brand awareness, visibility, and marketing. So ultimately, how are you marketing yourself in order to generate a lead? How are you creating brand awareness around you, your services, what you do, and who you help? If you work for a larger agency, what you'll notice is that there'll be a dedicated marketing team who are doing this hard work for you. They've got a plan, a strategy, they go to market, they create content, they've got funnels, email marketing, and you're in a really fortunate position because people already know who you are. Now, quick story, when I worked for the global brand Hays were amazing because anytime I called any prospect, even if they didn't want to speak to me, so I definitely still got objections, I always was met with, oh yeah, Hays. Like, they always knew who I was. So I was never having to explain myself of who I was. It was almost as though there was that instant resonation between me and them. BD was still hard, don't get me wrong, it's hard in any industry. However, it was so much easier because when I went out alone in 2020 and started my own recruitment agency, I quickly realized when I was saying, hey, it's Jess calling from Rex Recruitment, people were like, who, what, where? And there was like an immediate defense mechanism. Like, people just did not want to speak to me. And this is when I really thought, you know what? This is the barrier between me having a successful business or desk or not. Because at the end of the day, if I wasn't able to actually create that visibility, brand awareness, and get a conversation in the first place, forget midway through the sales cycle, forget the close, you don't even get the opportunity for that. So for me, I really started to think, if that's the first step, how am I going to break this down? And this is how I came up with the front end, the midway, and then the back end conversion strategies, because you really need a process for all of that. Going back to what I was saying, I picked some lead generation strategies that worked in my space. A big one for me was personal branding. Absolutely love personal branding. It is absolutely critical in 2026 that you have a personal brand. Why? Because all it is a channel to market yourself, and social media can market you at scale. I call this the one-to-many method. It's where you post one thing and you reach thousands of people. Because if you're relying on one-on-one activity all day, you'll burn out. You'll just never be able to scale your desk, and you'll always hit that glass ceiling because there's only one of you and you've only got your time to exchange for a lead. I don't think anyone in 2026 should be exchanging time for leads. You should be exchanging time for high quality sales conversations and converting your leads, but not generating leads. There's just so much out there that can automate this process for you or scale this process through the one-to-many method. If you're finding that you've got a visibility problem, brand awareness problem, you're doing all of your one-on-one business development activity on the front end, spending just so much time doing these front end activities, finding people to speak to, doing the first contact, and you haven't found a way to scale that, that's your problem. So if this aligns to you, then I would say you've got a front end lead problem. If you're a recruiter that says, you know what, when I've got somebody to speak to, I can close the lead, I'm great at meetings, you have a front end challenge. Now, if you do want help with this, I run what's called the Be Raire Academy. This is ultimately my online training platform, and it is a complete roadmap for you to be able to generate $100,000 every single month. Doesn't matter if you're employed running a desk, doesn't matter if you're a business owner. This is an exact BD framework that works on any desk because you can tailor it. I will leave a link below for you to check that out. Let's just say you're like, you know what, Jess, no, I do have a personal brand. I do have a way to generate leads. I work for a business that's got a marketing team. People know who we are. I think it's my conversations. I think perhaps it's my questioning, my objection handling. That sounds aligned to you, then you might have a Midway sales cycle challenge. Midway is what I consider, you've got a lead, you've got somebody to speak to. What happens there? There's digital outreach, there's phone-based outreach, so conversations. And then what happens is you go through discovery phase, you ask questions, you preempt objections, you of course get objections like you do in any sales cycle, and you handle those objections. Now, this is what I call midway through. This is when someone's somewhat interested to speak to you, but it's your opportunity to qualify this lead. Now, if you feel like you're perhaps falling down here, you're not quite getting to the next stage of the sales cycle, you're always hitting a point of resistance in your conversations and your leads seem to drop off or ghost you or say, just send me an email, which by the way is code language for please get off the phone, then you may have a midway through sales cycle challenge. Now, there's a few things to consider if you fall into this stage. Number one is you have to be asking great questions. Now, did you know that there is a way to preempt any objection based on the questions that you ask? Because what I do and what I teach inside my online training academy is how to ask great questions which actually preempt and also extract the right information to handle any objection before they arise. Now, there's actually a way to do that very discreetly, and even if you've got the most difficult prospect that's just not giving you any information, I've got some really great sales techniques to still be able to extract that. Check it out. If you are struggling at this stage, you absolutely need to know how to ask the right questions at the right time to extract the right information. Then, of course, there's objections. Now, this is where you decipher where it is a real objection or a reflex objection, which is just send me an email. That means get me off the phone. Reflex objections actually need to be handled differently to real objections. So when you isolate and handle and overcome a real objection is two different processes. If this is an area that you see that you do have a little bit of a weakness and you do need that additional support, definitely check out the academy. We also do group mentoring within the academy, so you can implement on your desk and get help in real time as well, because it's really, really important that you master this. I'll be honest, if you don't master this, you'll never be highly successful in recruitment. Sure, you might get some wins, quick wins and so forth. You might be in the right place at the right time, but you're always going to hit points of resistance in sales conversation. It's just sales. So the quicker you learn to accept that and do something about it and become a master objection handler, you'll be able to close like crazy. Because fun fact, a close doesn't happen at the end. A close happens part way through a conversation. So that leads to my next point, which is what we call a trial close. Now, I know I said there's 3 stages to this BD process, and there is. The final stage we're going to talk about is the back-end conversion process. But there's kind of a little hybrid transition into this, which I call the trial close. Now, a trial close is where you test the waters to see if your prospect would say yes if you were to close. So let's just say you go through the sales conversation, you handle objections, and then you establish that your potential client, your prospect, potentially needs your help. A trial close would be along the lines of, so Mr. Client, you've said XYZ. Do you think if I was able to solve this problem for you by the time frame that you've mentioned, you would consider using an agency? If they say yes, sure, you can go into the back end stage of the process, which is the conversion phase. But you should never try to convert if you haven't trial closed. If this point your prospect says, oh, I don't know, actually, I think blah, 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 they're too expensive. Number one, you've just actually uncovered a new objection to handle, which is fine. Objections are just hesitant moments and you've got a chance to overcome that and justify the cost. You also then don't want to go blah and just blurt out a big pitch if this person's thinking, oh my God, get this recruiter off the phone. They're trying to pitch to me and I don't even want this. What this is actually going to do is increase their defense. They're not listening to you. You're never going to close them. You're wasting your time and theirs, and actually they're going to never want to speak to you again because they feel really uncomfortable in your presence. I always find I trial close. If I get the green light to go ahead, I then go into back end stage, which is my conversion, my negotiation, which we'll talk about. If at this point I get a hesitancy, I use a sales technique called looping. And looping is where you loop back to a previous stage. So if someone's still hesitant, they don't trust you yet, they don't trust recruitment yet, they don't have a real need yet, there's no urgency that's been created. So what we need to do is loop back to a previous stage, which typically would be a questioning phase. It would be to uncover what's going on for them. Sometimes it's asking about questions around cost of inaction. I call this making it real impact questioning. So making it real impact questioning is when you say things such as, so Mr. Client, you've said you've got XYZ problem. What do you think would happen if you kept relying on job ads? You know, you've had this job vacant for 6 months now. Can you wait another 6 months? And you're actually making it real in their head to go, yeah, that's a really good point. I need to do something right now. That's also, like I said, you can loop back to a previous stage by asking any of the right questions. Questions are honestly the most important part of a sales cycle. You cannot get to the end and convert if you haven't asked great questions which extract the right information. So always loop back if you're hitting resistance at any point in any sales conversation. Now, assuming your client says yes to your trial close, they'd potentially work with an agency, they'd potentially consider partnering with you. What I would then do is go into my back end or conversion stage of the business development cycle. This is where we transition from a trial close to actually a pitch and a close. So this is where you pitch in alignment to everything your clients said that they want. So if you've gone through the right questions, you know what they've tried in the past, what they're currently doing, what they want in the future, you actually pitch in alignment with this, which is, hey, Mr. Client, you said that this part didn't work. This is the needs that you may have, and this is the future outcome that you're going to get as a result of working with me. Trial close. Does that sound like it could work for you? Well, yeah, sure. You've just closed based on what they don't want and what they want. Yes, trial close. Awesome, close. And this is where you actually go into your final stage, which is closing the deal. There's just so many different ways that you can close a deal. Everyone has a different style. I personally like a direct close. I ask for the business, but there's just so many other variations. And again, all within the online academy. If you want to check that out, there is a 7-day free trial, by the way, for you to check that out for free. So at least try it out so you can make an informed decision as to whether or not it's helpful for you. Now, you successfully close your client. You'd think that the deal is done, but the deal is not done until terms of business are signed off. Now, this is a whole process within itself. Negotiating terms, getting all of the right decision makers on the bus, as I like to say, so making sure everyone's on board with the journey is a process. Sometimes I speak to recruiters, actually they can generate a lead, actually they can have a good sales conversation, but they can't get the commitment at the end. Then struck with the objection of my manager hasn't signed this off, or my boss says this is too expensive. If you always find this is your point of friction, you have a closing challenge. So what you need to do is become a master closer, become a master negotiator, and use various different sales tactics to create urgency, scarcity, and get commitment. Now, when I say urgency and scarcity, we're not doing this in an inauthentic way. It's just genuinely saying to somebody, I can help you get what you want. It is in your best interest to work with me, of course, assuming that it is. We don't do anything we're not supposed to in sales. But 9 times out of 10, every company wants to scale their business and their team. So you're actually doing them a disservice by not closing them and not getting them to make the move, because fun fact, sometimes people don't make decisions because they're scared to make decisions. So it's your job as a recruitment consultant to remember the consultant part in your job title and consult with them. and support them and guide them and mentor them and inspire them to make a decision, but also give them that complete certainty that they are going to get the result that they want as well. That's really the end-to-end stage of the sales cycle. So to recap, if you're not generating leads or people to speak to in the first place, you've got a front-end sales problem. So you need marketing, visibility, brand awareness. If you have leads, but you just can't seem to get a decent conversation, you might have a midway through sales cycle problem. So you need to get amazingly good at the right questions, objection handling, and some trial closing to test the waters as well. If you actually seem to have really good conversations, people want to speak to you often, but you just can't seem to get them over the line, you have a closing and commitment challenge. So all three of these challenges I can help you solve. Like I said, link below to check out the free trial to my online academy. Not only will I teach you what you need to do and the steps, I'll show you how to do it as well. And I know it'll work for you because it's worked for hundreds of recruiters that I've trained globally on all desks from all walks of life and all levels of experience. So if you did like this video and you found it helpful, please do give me a thumbs up and hit like. Don't forget to leave a comment below if you want me to create a video on a certain topic, anything that's related to lead gen, BD, LinkedIn personal branding. That's really my core areas. So leave a comment below if you would like me to create more content. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video and I'll see you in the next one.